Welcome back, everybody. So today I'm talking about coilovers versus airbags. What's the best setup for the C4 Corvette? So I ran coilovers, actually 2 sets of coilovers for about 1.5 years. I ran a lowered set and then I went with a super low set, and then now I'm riding on air ride. So I'm gonna give you my honest opinion on both. I'm gonna tell you the pros, the cons, and the little things that I dealt with and what I really think is the best at the end of the video. So right now we're gonna start with air ride and talk about that. Okay, so the first pro of air ride, which is my favorite reason and the main reason why I did it, is this. The stance of that is like my favorite. When I bought this car, I wanted it to look a certain way. That was my main type of idea for building the car, is that I wanted it to sit low, have cool wheels on it, and still have an original appearance. So when I bought this car, it was a purpose-built car for that look that I was going after. After having coilovers, I decided to go air ride to achieve that look and still be able to drive the car. So the second thing about air ride is the adjustability of the suspension. So it is literally the best of both worlds. So you can literally hop in the car, lift it up, drive it over speed bumps, any hard aprons in an entranceway. It really has that factory feel when you're driving it, and you can lift it up a little higher if you needed that extra clearance. So that adjustability is probably the best thing about it, because when you drive a lower car all the time, it is just tough. You really have to know where you're driving, and if you hit a speed bump or something, sometimes you gotta turn around. But with air ride, you can just lift the car up, or your ride height is just a normal ride height where you don't have to deal with it or even think twice about it. So that, in my opinion, is the second best thing besides actually having that look of the thing laid out, is that you have the adjustability of the suspension to have your cake and eat it too, for the most part. Another pro for me for air ride was the uniqueness of the build. So there's like a handful of bag C4 Corvettes probably like in the world. Everybody kind of knows each other at this point because it's just not really a common thing people do with these cars. So the uniqueness of the build to me is kind of like a pro thing to do, because you don't really see many. You're not gonna bump into another air ride C4 because there's no bolt-in kits or anything like that. So I would say that's another pro for me, is just doing something that not many people do or have done, especially going as low as this car is, and me going the extra mile just to get it there too. So I would say that would be definitely another pro for air ride, is just the custom build of it. All right, now we go to the dark side of it, the cons, the worst part, the things that you kind of maybe regret by pulling the trigger and wanting to bag your car. The main reason is you're adding a whole other system on the car. You're literally adding a whole other handful of headaches that you don't really need to have. So it's like, depending what you're trying to do with it, do you really want to add a whole other system, compressors, tanks, management, airlines? Do you want to add all that to your car and then deal with everything else, like if you have built engine and stuff like that? So you really got to factor that in when you decide to go air ride, is that you're going to have to deal with a whole other set of problems. Now once those things are worked out, they're fine and it's not a big deal. But until they are, or if you have issues with it, then that's just one more thing to add on to. But for me, it wasn't a big thing, because like I said, this is a purpose-built car. It's not my everyday driver. If something goes wrong, just pull it in here, fix it when we get to it. But that's mainly the thing you got to look after, is that there's a whole other set of problems on board now that you're going to have to address. Granted, the technology of air ride has come so far that there's not really issues, and I don't have many problems with it at all for the most part, as much as I drive it. But that's one thing to keep in mind, is that you have a whole other system on board now. All right, another con is this. There's no really bolt-in kit available for these. There's something out there, I don't know if anybody actually bought it, but I've seen it on one site that's like $5 or $6 grand, and it's just like a bunch of linkage and weld-on brackets and stuff like that. But I know by looking at it that it's not going to get you super low. We'll lower the car a little bit, yeah, but you're still going to have to do a ton of fab work with it. So that's really where the tricky part begins. It's because there's not a bolt-in easy part for air ride. There's nothing that you can just be like, oh, I'll bolt it up in a weekend and drive it. like coilovers, or even if you had like a more modern car. I think they have a bolting kit for a C5 Corvette or a C6 Corvette, but for these, there's really nothing out there available at all. So you are stuck making that thing yourself, or following my build and taking some ideas off of my stuff, which I put out there for everybody to go ahead and just do it and figure it out yourself. That's the whole other set of problems too, is that you actually have to make it or have somebody make it for you. All right, the last and probably most important con is the cost of it. So I did a cost breakdown when I built the car, or after I built the car, and I think it was around like 5 or 6 grand just in parts, right? That's the system, all the material and stuff like that, brackets, hoses, like all the little stuff that you needed. I tallied up around like 5 to 6 grand, something like that. And then my labor time that I kind of compared to like another fab shop was another 5 or 6 grand. So you're looking at like anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 if you would take your car somewhere to get it bagged. So that's a lot of money. And even if you're like 5 or 6 grand to bag it, and then you got to do endless hours worth of labor and tweaking and inspection and, you know, clearance and all that kind of little stuff like that. So there's a ton of work that goes into it. So that's the big thing, is that it's going to cost you a lot more money than anything else, than lowering bolts or, you know, even coilovers. So that's the biggest con, is the cost to bag your car. Okay, so now let's talk about the pros of coilovers. So this is a picture of my car on coilovers here. So it looked awesome. I was really happy with the way that the fitment of the tires was, and I was really happy with the way the thing looked. And the best pro about the coilovers is they're bolt-on. Buy them, order them, bolt them up. You gotta assemble them for the most part, because there isn't still like, I think 89 to 96 or something like that. They have the bolt-in set, but the earlier ones now, I did a video on of all the part numbers and everything I used to assemble them yourself and bolt them up. So that's been really popular, and I know a lot of people are doing that now, which is awesome, because when I first did it, there wasn't really much information out there, hence why I ended up going with 2 sets of coilovers to get the exact ride height that I wanted to. So using QA1 products, their coilovers, their springs, all their little accessories for their T-bar and shock eyelets and stuff like that, you can usually get everything, put it together, unbolt all your old stuff, bolt this stuff up, and hit the road, which is awesome. So you really can't get anything better than that. You can buy it and bolt it right up. All right, so number 2 pro is handling. With those on there, the thing handled like it was on rails, felt like a go-kart, and I was super happy with it. The way the thing just, you could take a corner with it and it just handled. QA1 shocks are HT1 adjustable, so you can control the dampening on all 4 corners. So I really enjoyed the handling of the coilovers, which was definitely a big plus. The next thing I would say would be a pretty good pro with coilovers, if you're going from a stock height to coilovers, is you get a really nice stance. Depending on your wheel and tire package, like the size of it, you can really set the thing up nice with like no wheel well gap, and have the car have a really nice look to it and still have the drivability that you want. Because I mean, to me, that was the main thing, because there's huge wheel well gaps in there, especially the early ones, that just to eliminate that and have a good wheel package in there, that you'll have that awesome look and still have the handling and not really have to worry too much about, you know, rubbing or anything like that. All right, the best pro coilovers is this. For like $1,000 to $1,200, you can get a really nice set of coilovers and bolt them right up on a weekend and have yourself a proper sports car and have an awesome handling C4 Corvette for a fraction of the price compared to the $10,000 to $12,000 for doing air ride. So that's definitely a pro when it comes to coilovers, is that it's not a lot of money to get a really nice suspension package to make your car handle awesome. All right, as far as cons are concerned, there's not really that many when it comes to the coilovers. I did come up with 3 just for the video. The first thing I would say is that you have to buy the rear lower coilover mounts. I went with Van Steel ones, which were really nice, awesome product, or you can make something, but that's like a whole other, like, you know, time, or like $300 on top of the coilovers just to mount them in the rear. So I thought that was a little bit of a pain in the butt. All right, so the second con is this. When you go super low, like I did with the last set of coilovers I had, you get a driveline vibration in the rear around 55, 60 miles an hour. And I've said this countless times, because the half shafts are no longer parallel with the ground, they're up like this, so the thing vibrates around 55 miles an hour. So that was for me like, okay, well, I'm gonna just bag the car so I can drive it normally and then sit it down and get the look I like. If you're a normal person and you get coilovers and just drop it like 2 inches and you have a good handling car, you're not gonna have that problem at all. But if you are gonna go super low and you wanna drive the thing super fast, you're gonna have that vibration there. And it's probably gonna eat some U-joints like nobody's business. So I would say that would be the second, only if you go that low. All right, and the last thing I would say would be like clearance and adjustability. So when you're going super low, obviously, you know, it's more of a pain when you're going places because you really gotta keep an eye out for manhole covers, you know, potholes, you know, parking lots that you gotta pull into, all that little stuff that eventually becomes a problem. For me, I didn't care. I was like, oh, look how cool it looks. But then I was like, oh, I can't even make a left down this road by my house because there's 5 speed bumps and the car's gonna get stuck there and I'm never gonna get it back. So they were things that I was like, okay, well, maybe being this low and not being able to raise it up that much is gonna be a kind of an issue when it comes to wanting to drive further than like a mile up the street and back. So that would be the only other con I would say, is that you can raise it up a little bit, but when you go really, really low, you're kind of, you know, stuck with clearance issues. So besides that, it's not that big of a deal if you're just going down a couple inches. All right, so now that you heard me ramble on about the pros and cons, I'm gonna tell you my pick, and my pick is this: coilovers. I feel like that is the best suspension upgrade for the money that you could do for your car. You can pretty much set what kind of ride height you want with them by the different options that they have, and you can bolt them up and you'll have a really awesome handling car. So I would totally do that. If I ever got it on the C4, I would run coilovers on it, mainly just so I could have both. I don't regret bagging my car. It's exactly what I wanted to do, but this is just my opinion on if you're gonna spend a little bit of money on some suspension, that's kind of the way to go. So if you enjoyed the video, press like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.